Degrees versus radians. So you've all heard of degrees before. An acute angle has 30 degrees, a right angle has 90 degrees. You know that spinning around in a circle means you are turning 360 degrees. But what is this radian thing that you're talking about? Well, all radian is a unit of measurement. Think of how some people like to use inches, while other people in the world use centimeters. They're both measuring distance, but they're very different units. That's kind of the same thing with degrees and radians. Degrees is a unit of measurement to measure angles. Well, so is radians. Now, you're probably not that familiar with radians, but we're going to start using it very, very frequently in pre-calculus and trigonometry. So let's learn how to measure angles using radians. Let's start by doing a quick face-off between degrees and radians. As we move here from, let's say this is our starting point right here, as we move to the left, here in degrees, we get to 90 degrees. If we continue halfway around, we get to 180 degrees. Moving forward, 270 degrees. And once we get right back to where we started, that's 360 degrees. Looking at the radian side, if we start, once we get to this 90 degree point, this is going to be pi over 2 radians. That's right. Radians involves pi. Moving on, once we get to this 180 degree point, we're going to have pi radians. Continuing forward, once we get to 270 degrees, we're going to have 3 pi over 2 radians. And finally, after the full 360, we have 2 pi radians. The skill we're going to be working on is converting between degrees and radians. So if you have this many degrees, how many radians do you have? If you have this many radians, how many degrees you have? Notice our two pictures here. You can see that pi over 2 lines up with 90, pi lines up with 180, 360 lines up with 2 pi. So the easiest way to convert back and forth, in my opinion, would be to set up a ratio. A ratio that would represent the relationship between radians and degrees. I'm going to go ahead and select to use 180 degrees and pi because those will give us the simplest form. So for our ratio, let's go ahead and set up 180 degrees divided by pi radians. Write this down because this is going to be kind of our basic tool to convert between one and the other. Now, no matter what they give you initially and what they want you to find, degrees or radians, you can always use this proportion here, plug in your values, and solve for what they want you to solve for. So here we have 180 degrees over pi radians, like we talked about before. That's going to equal how many degrees over how many radians. All right, let's do an example. Convert 360 degrees to radians. So let's start off like always. We want our ratio 180 over pi, and that's going to equal our number of degrees. Well, we have 360 degrees, so I'll put 360 there, divided by how many radians. Now that's what we're trying to find here, so I'm going to go ahead and put in x. If I solve for x from there, I'm going to go ahead and get x equals 360 pi divided by 180, which is going to simplify to 2 pi. And recall, based on our comparison, our face-off before, we do know that 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians. Let's do one last example. Here, we want to convert pi over 4 radians to degrees. So, just like before, let's start off with our ratio. That's going to be 180 over pi is equal to, this time, I don't know what my degrees are, right? We're converting pi over 4 radians to degrees. So my degrees is going to be my x value. That's going to be divided by my radian value, in this case, pi over 4. So I'll put pi over 4 right underneath there. All right, try not to get thrown off by this fraction over fraction. Here we have x divided by pi over 4. All we're going to do is solve like normal. In this case, Since we have x divided by pi over 4, all we need to do is times both sides by pi over 4 times the right and times the left by pi over 4. These are going to cancel each other out, leaving us with an x equals, and then we have pi over 4 times 180 over pi. That's going to give us 180 pi over 4 pi. And if we simplified that out, we know those pi's are going to cross each other out, and we're just going to be left with x equals 45 degrees.